Today's presenter, Mike Vermeer, is a manager of our industrial software and services at Panduit Corporation. He holds an engineering degree from Purdue University and a master's degree from DePaul University. Mike has spent his tenure at Panduit learning from his customers and delivering new offerings to help them improve their business. He is currently focused on software and services offerings that deliver customers confidence in a reliable industrial Ethernet network foundation. I will now hand the call over to Mike Vermeer.
Thank you, Jane. Again, this is Mike, and I want to talk a little bit about improving documentation for the teams on the plant floor responsible for the uptime of the plant and how they can get real-time monitoring for those devices on the plant floor. Tied to this, we're going to be talking about new capabilities inside of version 3.1.2 of the software, which is to be released very, very soon. So briefly, we'll talk about why IntraView is useful in the plant environment. We'll talk about new capabilities that make it even more useful and some services and system integrator partnerships that help complete the offering that you need to stay up and running and have confidence in your industrial Ethernet system. Then we'll go a little bit into where we're looking in the future and are looking forward to also get your input on what you see valuable in the context of this offering and presentation. Before we begin, I'd like to ask a question on how you see the use of industrial Ethernet devices in your plant and what reliance you have on industrial Ethernet devices for your plant output.
Okay, Mike, I went ahead and launched the poll. We want to take just a few moments to take this poll question. Okay, Mike, I am going to go ahead and close the poll.
Thank you for that. And give you a little bit of information from the market on where overall we're seeing a reliance on industrial Ethernet. And the main message is not only growth of industrial Ethernet, but acceleration of that growth of industrial Ethernet. In fact, several years ago, we were at probably 25%, and we're already past 50% of networks being put in place on the plant floor are Ethernet as opposed to field bus networks. This has been a massive growth, and the reality is that Ethernet is becoming critical for the operation system and for production output on the plant floor. And that Ethernet network is not only the fastest growing, it's the most future-proof. That's where we're seeing more and more devices being launched, and we're even seeing wireless Ethernet starting now and growing rapidly, I think almost doubling in its application in the plant floor. And that means that there are new challenges and new needs in the plant. Typically, when we talk about the industrial Ethernet, or when we talk about the Ethernet network, our first response is that IT supports and continues to support the Ethernet network. And that's true. It's critical to have IT support, especially in the higher end of the architecture on the Ethernet network. But now when we're talking about especially the replacement of those field bus devices with Ethernet devices, we have teams in the plant floor responsible for production and using these devices, whether they're drives or PLCs, gateways, and HMIs, and I/O. All of these devices are now communicating using a version of standard off-the-shelf Ethernet, but focused towards production use and towards automation. And so we need to provide information to the team in the plant that needs to document what devices are there and how those devices are performing, doing maintenance on the machines, whether it's a discrete conveying or assembly type activity or a process type activity, and really just help keep the plant producing. So there's a new responsibility relative to Ethernet on the plant floor, not just monitoring the architecture and the high-level network, but also owning the devices that are connecting to the network day to day, managing changes to those devices, and keeping the plant producing. So what that looks like is there are a number of types of monitoring capabilities that can be leveraged in the plant or across the Ethernet network. The most common is going to be network and switch monitoring. And this is a capability that is foundational to the IT teams that manage the switches, the servers, the IT rooms, IT closets, and the data centers across the enterprise, and also that touches the plant floor. So they're going to be looking at the switches and the servers that support the overall enterprise. There's also a new type of monitoring pulling from deep packet inspection capabilities that have been built on firewalls and the use of firewalls to review packets in real time and identify security risks. So these deep packet inspection tools pull packet information from switches across the enterprise, analyze the content to that traffic in real time, and identify, for example, where there might be cybersecurity risks. This is a very deep type of monitoring that is also now being used in the plant environment and is one way to especially focus on cybersecurity risks. What we're looking at is device monitoring all the way on the plant floor. So we're focusing on discovery, monitoring, and the communication performance of these automation devices all the way at the edge. Sometimes they're connected into switches that IT is monitoring, but let's be honest, sometimes they're connected into unmanaged switches or gateways, or sometimes not even connected to the network at all. And these devices often are critical for the whole performance of the plant floor. So we're looking at monitoring these devices and how we can make sure that the plant can stay up and running, even in an environment where the network in the plant floor is not as reliable as preferred. When we monitor the devices all the way at the edge, we have to realize, like I said before, that not all these devices are even connected or available from the overall plant network. So we have tools such as the Interview Appliance, a hardware device that allows you to monitor networks that are not connected to the overall network, either because it's behind a PLC backplane or because it's completely unconnected to the network. So we can monitor these devices and have centralized visibility to the industrial plant, to the devices on the network, even if not all the devices are connected to one another. So that's why Interview. It provides a visibility to the devices at the edge, those devices, because the devices are what actually produces the product and drives the production. We need to do that in real time. We need to do it whether or not those devices are connected all the way into the plant network. Now with that, I want to launch into some of the capabilities that we've added to the Interview software over the last year. We've been listening to our customers and hearing concerns around advances in security and challenges around security in the plant floor and movement that they need to see and movement that they need to make in their network. We've also made done some development around Linux, seeing opportunity and need also for a Linux operating system in the plant. We've added monitoring that looks at specific parts of the plant and the devices in the plant to capture errors, especially errors that can hint at issues in the physical infrastructure. We've also looked at other protocols, common protocols such as Profinet, and improved documentation for Profinet networks. And really across the board, we've done a lot around improving the documentation and improving our customers' ability to maintain documentation without putting a huge amount of effort continuously into maintaining that documentation. And we've added some capabilities to view the devices in the plant and the plant performance from a supervisory perspective. So if you have 12 plants, we can allow you to have one pane to look at the performance at a high level of all those plants, and then drill into specific plants or specific manufacturing lines as you see necessary. So we've done a lot, and now I'm going to go through topic by topic specifics on what we've done within the platform. We'll start with security. We've been hearing more and more as IT gets involved in the plant floor, restrictions and rules built around the plant network that helps improve the security of the overall system. One thing that we've added is secure socket layer encryption so that we can enable that encrypted link between the browser connected to the interview server and the interview server itself. So this is an optional capability that can be activated, and you can add your own certificate in order to ensure that encrypted connection between the browser and the server, and get the traditional HTTPS link when you go into the interview browser and look at the performance of your plant. This is fully optional. It's not required for the customer, but it is a capability that can be built for any customer using IntraView. We've also implemented optional integration into an Active Directory system, Microsoft Active Directory. And that includes the change to add a layer of user to the number of users or the type of users allowable within the system. So we've added a user level, which requires login through Microsoft Active Directory, and we've also added an administrator level who can perform the configurations required to make changes, admin verify devices, etc. So again, this is something that you can opt into if you have an Active Directory implementation within your enterprise, and we simply link into that Active Directory implementation and allow you to use your standard user profiles or build a user profile specific to those that need view-only capability to interview and those that need administrator capability. We've also taken a deeper look at the security of the software. We've asked questions of our customers around who they look to for guidance and expertise around security. And based on customer recommendation as well as other research, we've worked with the guidelines provided by the Center for Internet Security and worked down a path of hardening both our Linux-based appliances as well as our web servers and other elements of the software inside of IntraView. So our focus is providing our customers with the best level of security that they need for their plant. That includes both optional capabilities of providing encryption when used within the plant, as well as linking into your Active Directory login profiles. And that also includes general hardening of our servers, following guidelines from the Center for Internet Security. So we're doing that. We're continuing to look at where it makes sense to implement security capabilities within the software, understanding that there's always a balance between usability and security, and we're trying to make that balance as effective as possible for our customers. Next, on the Linux implementation, IntraView is most commonly deployed on a Windows operating system, but actually has quite a long history with Linux. as our hardware appliances have always been based on a Linux platform. With the growth of IT and OT convergence, as was highlighted simply by the rapid growth of Ethernet in the plant, and also you can, by your experience working with IT teams across the enterprise and the plant floor, with IT's involvement in the plant, there's a growing interest in Linux within the OT environment, as it's also expanded in the enterprise space. We've fully validated the use of Linux with IntraView, and we're soon to launch a complete Linux virtual machine, a complete IntraView server on a Linux virtual machine that will be available for download and use. This will be completely parallel to the existing Windows operating system that we, or Windows operating system build that we allow. It will be a complete VM. It won't be an installer built for Linux, but in a complete Debian Linux virtual machine that can be implemented. And you can expect that the version will have all of the same capabilities, even the capabilities we're announcing today that have been built on the Windows operating system. So that is something that we've been working on for a while, and it's been piloted in beta for quite some time, and it's had excellent results in the field. So something else that we're providing to our customers, especially to help the convergence between IT and operations in the plant floor. As we look at the network on the plant floor, one common response from customers is they have a very strong network typically in the enterprise environment, structured, well-maintained and cared for. There are always exceptions, but generally in the enterprise environment, the network is robust. But in the plant floor, comparatively, the network has been built in a more ad hoc way and not as robust, which is a challenge because the production that sits on and is now critically relies on the Ethernet network in the plant floor, can be impacted by the poor network in the plant. So we're finding ways to show within the IntraView platform alerts that indicate that there are issues with the industrial network. Obviously, we can't completely replace an assessment by an intelligent system integrator or services company, but there are things that can definitely supplement these assessments, such as the use of IntraView detecting CRC errors, which indicate communication problems. These communication problems can occur and can trigger CRC errors as a result of bad cable, noise, duplex mismatch, and issues such as these. We're not only logging the issues, we're also showing them on the connection map and providing a warning error in the toolbar that you might have issues relative to the threshold of CRC errors and or other communication issues with these devices in the plant. So we're constantly looking for ways that we can take the data and show you how your systems are performing and show you where the root cause of issues you might be seeing are. And this is just one example, checking for errors within not only switches, but also devices themselves in the plant. As you also saw with the market data provided at the beginning of this webinar, Ethernet is growing, and that includes variants of Ethernet, including the Profinet variant, the Profinet protocol, which sits on standard TCP/IP Ethernet technology. And a lot of customers use this, machine builders. It's centered. There's a strong utilization of this centered in Europe and the machine builders coming out of Europe, but there's a lot of usage of this also in North America and in Asia Pacific. And our customers have asked us to implement more capability around showing Profinet level bus and ring topology, and we've recently added this. So now with version 3.1.2, IntraView will detect the topology, the edge topology of what devices are connected to what within a Profinet network, independent of what brand of devices you might be connecting within this environment, and also showing where the redundant link sits if the edge topology is a ring topology as opposed to a bus. So providing this visibility is one way that we enhance the documentation and provide technicians and first responders information about what problems might be occurring in their plant, and get rapidly to resolution of issues when they occur. We've added a lot beyond Profinet. We've added a lot around documentation to make it as simple as possible to, at a glance, identify what issues or risks you might see in your plant. So in this case, you're seeing a lot of devices that have disconnected, and we've highlighted the red lines because it's critical. When you see a device disconnect, you want to know that that device is disconnected. Also, we've highlighted any connection that has a threshold or CRC or input error. We highlight that in yellow, and also provide an indication at the top of the bar of how many threshold issues and other errors and how many disconnections are in the plant, as well as a legend that shows you at a glance what the colors mean for the different elements of the topology. And that legend is available and can be minimized or expanded as appropriate. We've also added capability to view the list of assets and sort the list of assets. We've had a capability to export into an Excel file, but it was valuable for our customers to see, to sort, and to search through this data within the interface itself, and then provide a simple download feature so that you can download it to a CSV or Excel file and make further use of it, or use it as a starting point to your documentation in the plant. And then our plant layout view has expanded to not only provide the ability to associate devices to a certain area of a plant. You can upload an image or drawing of your plant, move the devices to where they're located within the plant, and associate them to containers. So as right now I have a container highlighted and I can resize that, I can rename it. Right now it's called packaging. I have another container here on shipping, another on filling. And the value is now I have a system that it looks kind of like almost a Visio diagram or a layout of the plant, but it's a layout that's completely dynamic. So as devices disconnect or reconnect or are added to the network, I can see them and I can see what change has occurred on the drawing. So I'm no longer looking at a static or even a PDF drawing of my plant, but I'm looking at an active, up-to-date view of how my system is performing in the plant floor. So continuing to expand this area of documentation and help our customers get the best visibility possible, not only to those that are experts in the operation of the control system, but also to technicians, first responders, and operations personnel. And then finally, we've added to our supervisory capability. So we've had a supervisor capability that provided visibility to what is in the plant, but now we can look at the key performance indicators for each plant. We can visualize them and see where that overall plant has issues around uptime, around device incidents, around switch incidents. It's constantly maintaining an event log and provides you the capability to look across all of your plants around indicators that you set for the performance of as you want your networks to perform, and flags potential issues when they occur. And then where we're going next relative to the supervisor especially is to take all of the asset level data, the device data that is provided within each plant, and to provide that up into the supervisory view so that you can look at your supervisor and see not just what plants exist, but also what devices exist within those plants. And that's especially valuable for IT personnel who are now responsible for security in the plant, but might not even know what devices exist or whether they're critical. So the capability we're building is really to allow IT and operations to work together, because only operations knows whether a device inside of a plant is critical, and they can provide that information to IT to provide them documentation and confidence in the devices and firmware information, vendor, and IP address for the devices within the plant. Beyond this, we're taking our view of analytics and looking for additional analytics, and also seeing how we can drive alerts into third-party packages. So you'll see us both asking our customer base as well as looking at ways that we can provide more valuable information and more valuable information into more valuable places for our customers. So whether you have an IT system, workflow management system, or other types of controls alarming systems across your enterprise, you can provide this valuable information into those systems as well. So that's where we're going, and also working with partners down that path. Finally, we're working with within our own services team, as well as with our Panduit One ecosystem of system integrator partnerships, to provide a complete scope of assessment, design, and deployment, as well as monitoring across the entire life cycle of the industrial plant and the industrial Ethernet systems. So providing not only the services and or delivered through partnerships, as well as the devices and the systems that make it simple to deploy a robust network, along with the software. If this is of interest to you, if this software package specifically is of interest to you, I'd invite any of your system integrators or you to a webinar we're holding this Thursday with the Control System Integrator Association to talk more specifically about the software and capabilities that we're providing to system integrators to allow them to provide our mutual end user customers with assessment, design, deployment across their ecosystem. So that webinar is on Thursday. You can find information on how to join either through panduit.com or the Control System Integrator Association. And that leads to our final survey question. We see a lot of industrial Ethernet used in the plant floor, and what we're interested in knowing is your documentation of these industrial Ethernet devices digital? Do you have digital and maintainable documentation of industrial Ethernet? And sorry, PDF doesn't count, especially if it doesn't have the backup of Visio or some other Excel or other documentation. So take a moment and answer that question, and that will conclude the webinar.
Mike, I went ahead and launched the poll question, so we'll give it just a few moments here. Okay, just 2 more moments here. Looks like we are almost complete now. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll question. We will use this time, Mike, to answer some questions. So if our attendees would like to submit their questions utilizing the chat box in the GoToWebinar app, we'll go ahead and answer as many questions as we can. Looks like, Mike, we have our first question that came in. How does InterView help manage plant documentation and keep it up to date?
Yeah, I didn't touch on that. That's almost a core feature of InterView, the capability to continuously monitor the devices as they exist in the plant. And what we do is, if you picture in your mind the plant layout view, what we'll do as new devices join, those devices will show up in a yellow color, which shows that they're not admin verified, and they'll be placed right at the edge of the drawing of the plant layout. So when a customer would go in and take a look at their documentation, they would see this new device, non-admin verified, come in, and then they can disposition it, whether it needs to be removed or whether it can be admin verified and moved to its location within the plant.
Okay. Looks like we have another question here. What information does InterView detect about automation devices?
Yeah, so we're pulling information not only from switches. I mentioned the different types of monitoring. We do pull some information from the switches in terms of topology and information such as that, but InterView is going to also use automation protocols such as Ethernet IP and Profinet to identify not only location of where the device is on the network, as well as, but we'll also look for MAC address, vendor, who the vendor of the device is, and depending on the protocol, we'll find different information such as the model number, firmware, as I mentioned, vendor, information about what is this device. And that's what we're focused on for context. To provide a complete context is to identify what these devices are so that customers can place them in the context of where they belong in the plant.
Okay. Looks like I have one more here. What bandwidth does InterView take up?
Important question, because we're built for an automation environment and we are actively scanning the devices on the network, but we're doing so in a way that maintains extremely limited bandwidth. So typically under 1% of the overall bandwidth utilization. And there are other critical metrics that we maintain besides bandwidth to make sure that we're minimizing any impact on the network and keeping the system invisible to the devices.
Okay. We just want to thank you all for your time today and also your questions. This will conclude today's webinar.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you all for attending.